stand today with a community that is hurting, that is reeling and rocking from senseless murder and crime. And today, we're going to sit on prayers, and we're going to believe that God is going to turn things around. The Lord says in His Word, where 2 or 3 are gathered together, there He will be in the midst. Look around, there's more than 3 of us here. Which means the Lord is here with us. And when we go out on this route, we're going to go down DuPont Street, up Home Street. We're going to stop right back here at Sally and Chatham. We're going to earnestly pray. And we're going to believe God that when we get through with this, God is not only going to bless our city, but He's going to bless and protect Flint Fight.
I think people need to realize Flint is united, and we're coming together like never before. The clergy, elected officials, community leaders, we're coming together for the fight for our city. It's kind of like Joe Biden said with this election, where we're in a fight for the soul of the country, where we're in a fight for the soul of Flint. And there's too many people that's trying to corrupt and demoralize our city, and enough is enough. And if it takes the clergy to lead out and stand with community leaders, then that's what's going to happen, to fight for the soul of our city. Most exciting church experience, and we're here live right now with Genesee County Sheriff Mr. Chris Swanson. I want to thank God for Sheriff Swanson. He's our sheriff, certainly in huge support of him and the work that he is doing. This is our all-star sheriff. We seen him last year when racial tension and things became at its highest. We saw this elected sheriff, whom we all support, get involved and make sure that he diffused any problems or any issues that could arise out of people not being sensitive and aware of the Black Lives Matter movement. And so it's such a joy and a privilege to have Sheriff Swanson here at the Cathedral today, joining in on a conversation that is so important for church leaders and activists and elected officials and law enforcement to come together on. And so, again, we applaud Sheriff Chris Swanson for taking out the time for being with us today. I'm hosting this event because we want to bring awareness to how to keep our young people safe in a virtual space. As many of you know, our young people have been in school virtually for about a year, and now they have to re-engage in-person school or some sort of balance between a hybrid educational format. And one of the things that I've been saying is that the whole world is hybrid now. Everything we do is hybrid, some in person, some virtual. But I saw the other week where we have apps that are being advertised or commercialized to children that actually can have sex predators, human trafficking behind them. And I thought it would be very, very crucial for us as religious leaders in churches to start to, Sheriff, reimagine how we spend dollars and reimagine our budgets and what we can really do to partner with law enforcement agencies as a church and as religious leaders or schools or school leaders or even mental health professionals or social workers to see how we keep our children safe in a virtual space. So I want to thank you for joining me again today. Tell the audience a little bit about yourself, and then we'll dive right into the conversation.
Well, I appreciate it, and I have to say that coming in here and looking around as I was waiting, your church has done an amazing job with this building, how beautiful it is, and to see the transformation in your own life. I knew Pastor Martin when he was a youth pastor, and he's amazing when you look at the transformation. So I just want to say publicly,
thank you.
Great job. You take care of the stewardship of the body God's given you.
Yes, sir.
So I was very, very encouraged by that. But I have been with the sheriff's office since I was 18 years old.
Oh, wow.
I've been hired full-time since I was 20, so I'm going on my 29th year, June 2nd. I love serving people. I grew up in a law enforcement family, and throughout my whole career, especially here in Flint, you have seen so much. And this community has been through so much and has such a historic mark around the nation, around the world. I've gone through every rank at the sheriff's office, starting as an intern at Mott Community College under the tutelage of Avon Burns, Dr. Burns, who's put more people from color and women in law enforcement than anybody in county history. And I just honored her last week. She's that important to me. Throughout my whole career, Pastor, I've always seen my role at the sheriff's office as a missionary role. And I've been on the mission field for years, and I've seen what hurting people around the world hurt for, and it's just been a tug on my heart. One particular group that I've associated with about 5 years ago was out of the West Coast, and it's called Operation Underground Railroad, and they deal specifically with human trafficking. And at the time, I was the undersheriff, and I decided to link up with this organization and volunteer, and they do international operations where the customers, 90% of the customers that go to buy kids for the day, the weekend, and the month look like me.
Wow.
They're 90% white American or European males. So OUR goes over there and poses as these customers and rescues these kids once those kids are brought to the parties. So my first trip was in Mexico. It was an aftercare facility, and it broke my heart looking at these kids who have been trafficked 300-400 times a year since they were 7, 8, 9, 10 years old, having reconstructive surgery because of the trauma that they've experienced. And then they're in an aftercare facility, and they're learning how to engage in life, not just society and life. I remember seeing a 15-year-old little girl who had a 3-year-old child, and the trafficker was the father. And they do that to keep them sucked into that trap. She was in the 6th grade at 15 years old. And so all that to say, my next trip was in Haiti. I love Haiti. I've been to Haiti in multiple trips and multiple organizations. This one was an intel gathering trip because you have females from European countries that answer an app to work at a nice fancy resort, a 5-star resort, promise them weekly pay, nice rooms and boards, and they sign up for it through the Dominican, which is next to Haiti on the east side of the island. They get to the Dominican, and once they get there, they load up in this beautiful tour bus. The tour director takes all their passports, and they go west, and they cross the Haitian line, and they're trafficked. Wow. And they're sucked into this, and in Haiti, if you've ever been to Haiti, it's the most unbelievable place in the Western Hemisphere. It is unlike any place I've ever been around the world, and there is no hope. You can't go to your neighbor and say, I need help, because your neighbor's struggling. And so these women that come into there are now trafficked by cruise ships coming in from the ports, people that come over to Haiti for business, people from Haiti. It's just unbelievable. That was my second trip, to gather intel as to how to break into this operation. And on my way back from that trip, Pastor, the Lord hit me, and I believed that if we were doing this internationally, we need to do it here in Flint.
Right.
And prostitution and human trafficking are two different things. Prostitution is sad in and of itself, but human trafficking is taking somebody and commercializing their body and making it mobile, and they have no way to escape. It's sex slavery. Wow. And you get folks that are trapped into this because of fear, because of addictions, because their families are taken, they're taken from their families, and you think it's always at the other person's neighborhood, but it is right here in Flint, Genesee County, and it's anywhere anybody's watching that has internet access.
Anywhere.
So when you talk about virtual space, it's the whole world. It's the fastest growing criminal enterprise on the planet.
The fastest growing criminal enterprise on the planet is happening virtually. That's what you're saying.
100%.
100%. And the thing that piqued my interest some more was when I saw this special on the news, and you were in the front of it, and they were talking about how these apps that look harmless,
that's right,
and that are aimed at children, are actually sucking our children into human trafficking, sexual predators,
that's right,
pedophilia,
that's right,
even this new wave of love has no age, that whole movement, and I looked at it and I said, wow, because parents are trying to work.
Yep.
Parents are trying to hold down 2 jobs, and many children are left at home right now with an older brother or sister that may not be aware of how dangerous this whole virtual space can be. And as a pastor, it's my job to protect all of the parishioners.
That's right.
Okay, from the cradle to the mother in the church who may be 85 or 90 years old. And so what I wanted to talk about is, again, helping parents understand how important what you said is. Secondarily, as ministry leaders, trying to figure out, okay, what should we be incorporating into our sermons to help people understand that this is a real thing. So I'm gonna so I've seen this app called OkCupid, which I heard is dangerous. Another app, Kick, which I heard is very dangerous. Tinder, I heard is dangerous. So
Grindr.
Who?
Grindr. Skip the games.
Skip the games. Let's do, so skip, if you're out there, you want to write this stuff down. My sound got a little muffled here. Skip the games. Tinder, Kick, OkCupid. Give us a few more.
Grindr.
What is Grindr?
That's another social dating site that can take people down a very scary path.
Grindr.
And let me add to this. All the games that are out there that you can play with anybody in the world.
Right.
And you're talking, the biggest ones are Call of Duty, Minecraft.
So let me stop you.
Yep.
Now, when you talk about Call of Duty, I'm sure you just
blew their mind.
Yeah. Are you saying that there are sex predators and or people who are dealing in some sort of criminal activity using Call of Duty to get to our teenagers?
I'll go one step deeper. There are elementary and middle school games that are there for educational purposes that allow students or young people to link in with other people playing, that those people that are playing are many times pedophiles. Because you can't and you don't have to validate your identity. And think about the mindset of a predator. They're going to go to where the weak are. And so they go online.
Wow.
And most of the games, as long as our kids are quiet, they're out of our mind, right?
Yeah.
So these kids...
Out of sight.
Out of sight, out of mind.
Right.
They have headphones on, and they're playing, and all of a sudden someone says, hey, you're amazing at this. What's your name? Well, my name is Chris. Well, my name is Bob. Hey, Bob. Hey, Chris, send me a picture of yourself. Let me see what you look like. And it starts to build this relationship. And imagine having a kid who is hungry for attention or love, that craves this. That's what they realize. And then they start sucking them in, and it's called grooming.
Grooming. Let me ask this question, Sheriff. So, and this may sound redundant. Is that when you let's bring it home to Flint.
Yeah.
Is that a real issue in Flint where Call of Duty or Fortnite is really used to lead off our children into deviant behavior? Have you really, I mean.
1,000%. And
Wow.
I say that because we've seen all the tragedy that comes from that. And it has different spinoffs. Now, again, it's not everything.
And this is not to scare
is a
you.
portal.
This is to educate.
It's a portal.
Yeah, it's a gateway
That's
to
right.
something that could be potentially
That's right.
fatal or dangerous.
Let me just say this, that could predator circle your parking lot and try to schedule when your kids are coming in for children's church? Absolutely. But they're way more effective sitting at their house, tapping into people's online gaming or apps and luring them in and building relationship. This is what they do all day.
That's what they do.
This is what they do.
They're geniuses
Yes.
at what they do.
And so they try to build that relationship. And this is many times how it starts. They'll build it and they'll edify them so much where the person who is there hearing the message wants to please the person, not knowing they're a 55-year-old convicted sex offender. And then this person will say, and 9 out of 10 of them are all males. Let's just call it the way it is.
9 out of 10 are
and
males.
99% of them are males,
Okay.
all right? And so what they do is they ask you to tell more about your life. Tell me about your parents. Oh, you're from a single mom. Oh, okay, your parents are working. Well, where do you live? That's a beautiful town. Show me a picture of your cat. Send me a picture of yourself. And then they send pictures back. And then they'll ask for a provocative picture. So this little kid who thinks that they're doing something because there's a friend, or maybe they're threatened, or maybe they don't want to say no because they don't have the mental maturity to say no. Then
Because they built this relationship
That's right.
over this video game that
That's
we
right.
love both mutually.
There
And
you
so
go.
now I trust you.
So then they send a provocative picture, and now you go from grooming to sextortion. Where they
Sextortion.
Sextortion, like extortion, but with sex.
Wow.
And then they say, because everybody's got either a TikTok profile, Instagram profile, Snapchat profile. By the way, kids under the 18 are not doing Facebook. So don't think that if your kid doesn't have a Facebook account that they're immune to this.
What are kids under 18 doing?
Yeah. Oh, they're doing TikTok,
TikTok,
Snapchat,
Instagram.
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely.
Okay.
And they're in different spaces and they're in
The
different
us
apps.
older people are on Facebook, just so y'all know.
Yeah, yeah. Same thing. I mean, you just got to look at what the times are. And then they'll send this picture. Immediately, they've already done your profile research, and they say, hey, Chris, because my name is Chris, too.
My name's Chris, too. Go ahead.
Great name. Always fun. I've never met a boring Chris.
Yeah, me either.
And they'll say, hey, listen, I know your mom, Robin, is at work.
Because they went through the...
That's right. Because I see how you're related, and then they start saying, if you don't do this, I'm going to tell your mom. And then people get so scared. They do it. Many times they sometimes commit suicide too. It's that dangerous.
Wow.
And when you talk about the virtual space as your introduction, and this is meant to shock. We have so much more we're doing virtually now that's a pattern of life. Like this meeting right here.
Yeah.
2 years ago, you would never do this.
Right.
You would have a whole crowd of people.
Right. It's hybrid. Hybrid is the new
That's
world.
right. It is the new world, not to go away.
Yeah.
And that's why we're having this conversation.
So then let's talk about, Sheriff, are there any safety measures that Microsoft or Sony can put in place that could guard PlayStation, Xbox? There's nothing. So we're basically, what you're saying to me is when we bring this software or this stuff in our home, we have inadvertently, that phone, right, we have inadvertently
That's right.
created a portal that could be dangerous
That's right.
to our children. And the point that I'm trying to drive home, and I want to talk about this again, Grindr, OkCupid, Snapchat, Kick, TikTok. Talk about TikTok, because people think TikTok is harmless. You know, they see everybody doing the
dancing.
And they think it's harmless. How dangerous is TikTok? I mean, I just really want to deal with this. Yeah.
Look at this way. Look at everything on your phone that's an app is a gateway or a door. And if you can protect that door, you're probably doing okay. But if that door is left unprotected, what are you letting in your house? Just think of it that way. You know, I look at it as there's a lot of safe places to go in our community. But every once in a while, if you take your eye off something, that's the place they're going to come in. And you talk about the biblical concept that we have. You know, this is Satan's playground. And he's been given the keys, and he uses the language of lies. That is his native language, as you know.
Yeah,
and he's
he's
here
a liar.
to steal, kill, and destroy.
Right.
And I want people to know that life is great. We have many blessings, but Satan is out there to do to your family, to what you built out when you are trying to do the right thing. That's always that presence there. And this just makes it so much more portable and so easy for people to get into your lives. And a lot of times, I can tell you, once these traumas are done, they are difficult to build back.
What are you seeing? And I know there's only so much you can say being a law enforcement official, but when you talk about elementary age children, I said to people before, sometimes the government forgets that we as pastors are frontline workers as well.
100%. Amen to that.
Whatever goes on in the hospital, if it's tragic, it comes to us next.
You.
Okay, so they call you first.
Yep.
And then it goes to the hospital, and then if things don't work out there, it comes to us.
So I always say this, I say, we fix the broken pieces, then you pick up the pieces.
Absolutely, because if it has to come to us, sometimes it's a finality.
That's right.
And so when you're dealing with elementary age kids, 3rd grade, 4th grade, 5th grade, are you seeing kids really being introduced at a greater rate now to sex, period, than what we saw 2-3 years ago, or even pre-pandemic? Have you seen now, and I was telling somebody earlier, that when you talk about infrastructure, even of our country, we look like we went from maybe 20 to 30% reliance on Wi-Fi and broadband to probably 75 or 80% now as a nation. Have you seen an uptick in sexual deviancy since our kids have been forced now to be virtual?
So let me answer that in 2 parts. Number one, you talk about the virtual demand. Elon Musk is putting up a new internet system to bring higher speed internet to not only us, but to places that have never had internet because the demand is so high.
Demand is so high now.
So he's launching up satellites through SpaceX all the time, and you could sign up now for his new internet platform.
Okay.
To your second point, it's opportunity. Evil seeks opportunity.
Absolutely.
And when you see...
And we're not ignorant of Satan's devices, but go
100%.
ahead. Yeah.
And when you see the things that are happening, the time away from oversight, the exposure that they have, the amount of exposure, it's not uncommon that people will spend 14, 15 hours a day on their phone. And I'm not talking just kids, I'm talking adults. It is the way we do business. It is an addiction. And then you look at last year.
It is an addiction.
100%. Wow. I keep saying percentages, but it is so accurate. What you're saying is spot on. Pornography and the access to pornography in 2020 skyrocketed for online pornography. That pornography, when we talk about the arrests that we make through GHOST, which is our human trafficking strike team, we interview all these people, Pastor, and we ask them what started this desire to have sex with a 14, 13-year-old boy or girl. And you know what they say? Pornography. It starts out curious. It takes you to a place where you desensitize and you need more, and then you dehumanize people and you want to now act out, and it's a physiological demand, and then it becomes an addiction of itself, and then bam, there you get it. Well, that's being introduced at a younger age, more rapid than anything we've ever seen before. So we have a case in Genesee County, and I will give you generalities, but it is a middle schooler who had sex with their elementary sister. Oh. And they learned it because of watching pornography. Oh. And this is a good family who's now dealing with this trauma, and you can't unsee images. You can't unsee videos. And when I can pull up pornography on any app that you just mentioned, I can pull up Instagram and see provocative pictures. I can pull up Snapchat and see naked pictures. I can pull up TikTok. I can pull up all that stuff. Whether it's half naked or full naked, it creates this fantasy into people's minds, and it drives them to act out.
And, you know, my message has been to parents that if you're going to allow these young people to have cell phones, you've got to put the filters and the blocks on these phones. What are some good ones? Good filters, good blocks that can, and I'm being told that even some of these can still get through those filters and blocks. But what can parents do to stop access? Because, you know, we live in a society now. I don't know how we made it. I don't know how you and I made it back in the 80s, where, you know, you had to wait till somebody got to a landline phone before you talked to them. We talk to everybody now when we want to, no matter where they are. So how, and parents, because the world is a more dangerous place, they want to be able to text or call their child immediately. How do we get to a point of, because of that, because parents want access to their children on the phone, what are some good, something good they can put on these phones to block that kind of stuff?
So I'm going to give you the best way to do it.
All right.
Let me see your phone. Let me see your
like
phone.
I do in my house. Yeah, let me see your phone.
You got a password? Why do you have a password? Let me see your phone.
Yeah. Why can I not get in this phone?
That's it. Let me see your phone. When you have nothing to hide, you have nothing to fear.
Right.
But they can get around you so fast. I give you an example. Instagram, you could say, hey, what's your Instagram profile? And I could be like, here it is. But then they'll make a Finsta account. A fake Instagram account.
A Finsta.
Fake, F-I-N, Insta account.
Kids do that to block their parents from what's real.
And so do adults when they're trying to, have two different lives, you know what I mean? And they have a fake profile where they show their accountability partner, whoever that may be, grandma, auntie, mom, dad. This is my Instagram account. Okay, you're not doing anything. Who you following? But they got a whole fake account.
I just looked at my son. He said, not me, Dad. Yeah, okay. So I looked right back there at him because I didn't know that.
But you know what I'm talking about, don't you?
Oh, he does. Wow,
and absolutely. And when you get in your kid's business and you build a relationship, that is the best firewall you can build. That's the best safety net, is your kids need to know that what they're doing would either honor the house or dishonor the house. And if you don't have that oversight, that accountability, then nothing Microsoft or Apple can do can stop it.
If you're just logging on, my name is Chris Martin, again, pastor of Cathedral of Faith Church. We're having a wonderful conversation here with Sheriff Chris Swanson of Genesee County. We're trying to educate parents, grandparents, caregivers, school leaders, religious leaders, pastors, social workers, mental health professionals on how we can better barricade our children from this virtual reality, which is virtual pedophilia, virtual pornography, and the gateways and portals that exist through these seemingly harmless apps that have caused our kids sometimes to be right face-to-face with human trafficking and other deviant behavior. One of the things that I've been saying to my colleagues is that churches must reassess and now reimagine how we budget. We don't have to go back 2 years ago. A year ago, again, like you said, these cameras were not here. This particular platform was not what we would have used. We would call a community meeting and try to deal with this. Well, now the church has been, if you will, forced outside of the four walls. And none of us who understand what God is doing in this moment should be trying to figure out how to do ministry the way we did in 2019 or 2020. And so how churches spend money on community engagement, to me, is very key. You mentioned it before. It used to be a time where we could just put some inflatables out, get the whole community, have a good time, boom, boom, boom. But now, even if we do that, kids are still going back to, hey, I'm dating a 74-year-old man and don't even know it. I'm thinking it's a kid named Bob.
That's right.
And there's a dirty old man with a laundry list of convictions. So what should churches be doing? I think, that's why I have you here, that we've got to reach out to all of our elected officials, all of our law enforcement, and I think that church has got to understand we're not coming back in here per se. We've got to stay out there, and we've got to put resources in places that create partnerships for us to guard our children against this type of thing. And I think, parents, you've got to let us get you the information and don't get offended when we start preaching about this stuff. You know what I mean? So what kind of, you're a religious man. What kind of partnerships? How should churches be involved? Because I've been talking to my colleagues today saying, hey, we got to get involved and we've got to lead the charge in the neighborhood to get this done.
Well, let me just say, when you look at what the church has done for this community, I've seen it personally. Through COVID, we deployed our church groups to feed the people. During our protest, I saw it on your intro video. You went out of the streets. The church is not a building, as you know. It's the people.
It's the people.
And nobody does it better in this community than this church.
Thank you so much.
I see the activity. Even if you disagree with folks, you bring them in so you could see one-on-one what they stand for. Even if, we're not all perfect. We make mistakes, but you've got to involve law enforcement and the church community. You've got to involve church leaders, because right now, we talk about some negativity. You're probably reaching more people about this message on a weekday night than you would if you did open up this church. So there's a benefit for going outside
Absolutely.
and using the virtual space that's out there. But church leaders, I've said before, have to be more like Pastor Chris Martin in this church. You've got to be bold and not think that it can't happen to your Baptist campus, your Methodist campus. Say that you have to be honest. And I would say there's education, awareness, enforcement, and aftercare. And I think as we progress through this pandemic and we get to where we are, just in this community, we vaccinated 120,000 people already, just since the first of the year. People are getting back to a little bit of normal. You need to preach the message and start bringing people back to where they can be counseled and mentored by people of faith.
Got you.
Where people can see, I don't want to let Pastor down. Right now, if there's no connection, there's no accountability.
Right.
You know, I want a healthy fear that I want to respect what this church stands for. So there's a hybrid of, just like we're talking about now, that we've learned through virtual reality and regular, that as the church gets back to that new church,
Because that's what it's going to be.
that's going to be the new church.
It's not going to be the same, right?
Even if you said everything's open, you're still going to have people like, you know what, I want to watch church online, which is fine. I mean, if that's the way they
We
can
don't
worship.
condemn anybody for doing
That's
it.
right.
It's what it is. Yeah.
Fill your spirit with the word. And I think that's what we're going to have to do, is because we've lost ground, even though we had to. You've lost ground by that personal connection of the church pouring into their youth about how important that relationship is.
Because we don't have youth activities right
That's
now.
right.
You know, this church had, oh my God, we had the music, after school music. We brought instrumental music back to the north end of Flint, partnered with the Spinks organization. It was such a joy to me 3 times a week to see young people in here learning cello, learning bass,
Beautiful.
learning violin, fine arts. You know, we have the Bishop Marvin C. Pryor Computer Lab. We were a YMCA safe place.
Media Center.
The Media Center, which was a library, which I did to try to bridge the literacy gap amongst children of color, because children of color were behind in reading. And of course, when the legislature came out and said that, you know, if a student is not reading proficient by 3rd grade, then school districts are to, you know, retain them, you know, and so we built that. And I mean, and we have the school in the back, you know, the ISD, you know, who we partner with for Head Start. So to see of course, the Head Start is still functioning, but to see all of that have to go away because of COVID, it began to really bother me and say, okay, we've got to, like you said, we did lose ground, and we've got to now readjust.
That's right.
And we've got to say, hey, I need the health professional, I need the social worker, I need the law enforcement. Talk to us. How do we partner with you all, and are you all amenable? Hey, you just deputized me the other week, made me a deputy sheriff. You know, I was there at Mount Olive for the whole program you did about feeding and about. So that's what I'm saying. This is to educate, which we were doing, parents, and then to say to you, Sheriff, we're going to have your back, this church, and I'm going to bring others with me so that we can create our new hybrid attack.
That's right.
Okay, we have to have a new hybrid attack that churches can deploy resources, and that our elected officials and law enforcement can open us up to more resources, give you building, brick and mortar to do whatever we can to make sure that we have a unified attack. I'm with you. Because the things I hear you say breaks my heart. And we've got to go back to re-engaging. We don't have youth Sunday school. We don't have it anymore because of COVID, you know, and so we're trying all we can to show, at least I'm getting the ball rolling to show, hey, we're going to reimagine our budget. We're going to look at youth ministry. We're already got some things going on with evangelism to get souls saved. So, you know, it's a big deal.
Well, you bring up the deputization at Mount Olive. You know, I happen to be an elected official, but my heart is that I'm a Christ follower. I am a child of God, and when you do for the least of these, you do for the King.
You're doing him.
And when you do deputize all those pastors and all those church leaders and those community leaders, it is the example of what this community needs to do to join together in order for the common good, whether it's feeding people, whether it's taking care of people in a natural disaster, a man-made disaster, or whether it's educating. And what I have seen is nobody does it better than the church.
Right.
The church is still trusted. And the Lord is not going to let his church, even through COVID, go by the wayside. Absolutely. So I'm hopeful and I'm excited that that energy will be restored. And I believe that if the church deploys in their own facilities, their own communities, like we did back in the day, but times 10, we're going to make up for lost ground and then some. And so when you have a church event that has youth here, when that day comes, because it will come, when you hear the stringed instruments in the back, that instead of saying, oh, that's nice, go there and encourage your kids and say, what you're doing is amazing. You've got to replace this idle time with something that's positive, and then you need to restore that faith inside, that self-worth. We got some ground to make up, but I'm hopeful we can do it. I believe it.
Now, people are working from home, but it doesn't mean that they have time to watch what their children are doing.
That's right.
Tell us about criminal or deviant behavior or child neglect. Have those things, have you seen an uptick in that from your perspective because everything is going away? I mean, there's no gyms for kids to play ball. I mean, to me, it would seem as though the apps were able to gain ground because everyone was forced to a phone, to a Chromebook.
Yes.
And I know that there are firewalls, but what did you see? What have you seen as it pertains to deviant behavior, sexual deviancy, those type of things?
So this isn't just by age, but I just pulled the stats. We'll use one example. Addictions have gone up.
Addiction to?
Opiates.
Really?
Methamphetamine.
Yeah.
Pills.
Wow.
Pornography.
Among kids, among adults,
among
across
people,
the board? People.
Because idle time is the devil's workshop. And a lot of times people, they have nothing to do, but that trade has nothing, it's exploded. People have unfortunately used the means that was given in order to stimulate their own self-economy, have poured into alcohol and other addictions. And we've seen, I use these numbers, I just pulled them, since January, we've already had 13 overdoses from heroin, and 64 of those have been resuscitated through Narcan. The number one age group of overdoses is 55 and up that have died, but the number that has resuscitated, the largest age group, is 25 to 30. So more 25 to 30-year-olds are being resuscitated, but more 55 plus are dying.
Yeah.
On top of that, you talk about the neglect. I don't want to believe that people, because I'm still an optimist, that people would literally look at a child and say, but I know what happens. You mean nothing to me. But that happens. So when those scenarios happen, who does that child have to go to? Is it somebody in the family? Is it a mentor? Or is it somebody from the church? So yes, those numbers have risen. I don't think we're going to get those true numbers until we see the aftermath of this idle time. But logic will tell you that what we experienced this last year has caused some pain. This is why these conversations are so important, because if you see that, you need to step in. Even if it's not your blood, maybe it's a neighbor, maybe it's somebody that it goes to the church. If you have that ability to speak into someone's life, then speak, step in. And I've always said this, get into people's business. That will make them feel like they're important. They have value.
I want to go back for a minute. I want to really talk about Snapchat. Because as a pastor, oftentimes when I'm preaching, I see a lot of the top of heads, especially of the kids, and I know that they're on a social media platform.
That's right.
Snapchat was not allowed in my home. My kids were not allowed Snapchat at all. I'm not ashamed to say that, and they didn't interpret that as control. My kids, as they got old, my kids were not allowed to do any social media till they got about 16, and then.
And why is that, though? I know the answer, but.
Yeah, because I didn't want them right here getting opened up. My kids didn't have, when we first got our kids' cell phones, they were flip phones, first of all, with no data. I wanted to make sure that there was no data. And then as they got into, I guess, the smartphones, my wife, we had the family blocker on there so they couldn't get to all this stuff. But as they got older.
More mature,
older, and understood they understood where we were coming from. I remember saying to them, if you want Instagram, that's fine. But I have been vehemently against Snapchat because as a pastor, I have seen what Snapchat does to families through kids. And I think it disappears in 15 seconds.
That's right.
How does that, how do you guys, I've seen on the news where you guys have had to battle that even in criminal activity.
Yeah.
How do you deal with Snapchat? It seems to be such a nuisance But parents don't seem to want to go against it.
See, now, mind you, these app designs are from people all over the world. So they don't operate with the same rules that we do here in local churches, but also certainly in America. Snapchat was designed to send messages that cannot be recovered. What's the intent behind that? If you're sending something that you don't want someone to see, then what are you receiving?
What's the motive here?
What's the motive behind it? So you say it because you probably have personal experience of watching people's lives get destroyed because Snapchat has allowed messaging back and forth that is unhealthy and destructive. So we have had cases where messaging has been sent back and forth on Snapchat. And to your point, it is very difficult to try to recover those messages because it's designed to be deleted.
It's designed to be gone. Yeah.
And that's where the difficulty is, because a lot of the content from those messaging will explain how this crime happened or this assault happened, and it's done by Snapchat.
At one point, Michigan was ranking very high in the nation for human trafficking, maybe top 5, if I'm correct. Is Michigan still having a problem with human trafficking?
Yeah.
And if so, is it more above 18 or under 18?
Oof. Human trafficking, by definition, when it comes to youth, is anybody under the age of 17, whether they volunteer or not, for commercial sex. So even a 15-year-old or a 16-year-old says...
You said volunteer for commercial sex?
Yes.
What is that? I've never heard that. I mean,
they sell themselves for sex.
They could, so if you sell yourself, is it human trafficking or no?
If you sell yourself, even at 16, you're still considered, by definition, a human trafficking victim because you don't have the mentality to make a conscious, consensual decision for commercial sex.
But that's different than prostitution.
Yes. Prostitution is an adult commercial sex crime, which is not considered human trafficking. It is somebody who consciously makes that decision to stay at this block or to advertise for sex, but nobody's controlling them.
Gotcha.
See, the difference between prostitution and human trafficking is someone controls this person. They are enslaved to the person
they're
controlling.
Property. They are not planned.
Property. I tell
Gotcha.
people, do you know, by the way, that property in human trafficking relates to human beings? And the younger they are, the more money they get. So a 13-year-old boy can get $400 to $500 for full sex, whereas a full-grown adult can get $40 to $60. And that's why human trafficking victims can generate $200,000 to $250,000 gross income for the trafficker every year.
So the child is worth more money than the
100%,
adult.
yeah. And the traffickers know that. And I could go and I can order up. I want a 5-foot, dark-haired, light-skinned, blue-eyed female. And you can get it if the price is right. And these traffickers have multiple people under their control, and they can order up this person and demand a higher price. We had this as an example. And of course,
You are blowing my mind, Sheriff.
When you have Bitcoin on top of it, and you have Uber, and you have these ways to pay and transport people without being detected, it's a business.
Wait a minute, Sheriff. What did you say about Bitcoin?
It's cryptocurrency.
Cryptocurrency.
That's right. That cannot be tracked.
Right.
That money's exchanged, and there is no identity.
So people are using Bitcoin as part of human trafficking so that the tender that they use cannot be tracked.
That's right.
Wow.
And you transport people via different transports where nobody knows who you are. You can order up a ride for someone else to have them picked up. And when you look at all this, now mind you this, you are full-time making this ministry work.
Yeah.
There's an equal evil enemy out there that spends just as much time as you do making this work to try to traffic people around the country and around our community.
Well, let me ask this question. So then, like, okay, on Facebook, when you're getting all of these Bitcoin friend requests, are these people really trying to maybe suck you into something?
I don't know. I mean, I have Bitcoin. I can go right to my Bitcoin wallet. I have no...
Oh, so it's just used the wrong way.
It's another tool that people who want to be secret can use. Just like paying cash. Nobody's doing it on credit card.
Right.
Nobody's writing checks. They're paying cash and Bitcoin. What I'm saying is, just like Snapchat, evil finds a way to manipulate the system.
Satan has devices, man.
That's right.
Yeah.
And these are just different aspects that can be used for very dangerous exchanges and activities. So what we do in these conversations is just make people aware.
Yeah.
That if you see someone as a victim, so to speak, start to become reserved, depressed, They start to recluse. They start to be very shameful. You need to get in their life and say, what's going on? Maybe they're being trafficked and you don't even know it. It's everywhere, Pastor.
Can a child order an Uber?
With a fake account, absolutely. Because an Uber driver's not validating. Perfect example, this is how Uber's used. You may have seen the story, but a month ago, there was a 15-year-old out of Montrose that told her mom she's going to McDonald's in Montrose. She goes to McDonald's, and a 22-year-old guy Ubered from Toledo, Ohio.
Yeah, I remember seeing
all
that.
the way up to
To meet her.
Montrose. Met her at the McDonald's. They met on Snapchat. Went to the back of the woods, had sex for the first time. She was 15, he was 20. Then hitchhiked all the way back down to the Detroit. Had sex again there in a field.
With somebody, or the same girl?
Same dude.
Yeah.
And then Ubered back to Toledo at his house where we were able to work with the Toledo Police Department and arrest him. She was 15 years old. She has no sense and no ability to consent to sex. He used Uber to come and grab her and take her back home. He paid $184 for the one-way ticket to come up here.
From Toledo
right.
to Montrose.
And you would think, as an Uber driver, if you're driving up, where you going, man? Montrose, Michigan. And you look at that, I'm like, that's a big ticket. And then you pull up, and next thing you know, yeah. At what point did you want to call 911 to say, hey, I just dropped off some cat, and this ain't right? They don't want to get involved. They don't want nothing to do with it. They're on their way back to Toledo. That's how all these things happen.
Where did he meet her? Did he meet her online?
Oh, yeah, Snapchat.
Snapchat.
Right. And that was just one of many. And mind you, this is one of many around the country and around the world because there is no geographical boundaries that limit the apps that are used and the sites that are used, but mainly just apps. I could download on my Android or my iPhone.
Lyft, Uber,
any of those.
None of them are getting involved. See no evil, hear no evil. Pay me.
They don't want to. I just want to go do my job. Absolutely. And of course,
how are they protected? I'm saying, there's no liability on them at all for being an accomplice because as churches, sometimes we're held under all these liability issues with our insurances.
Right.
Even like
mandatory reporting.
Right, I'm a mandatory reporter.
Sure.
If I see something, I cannot turn my head.
Correct.
But even when we went through COVID, I remember my insurance agent saying, no youth ministry, no choir rehearsal, get rid of all your subleases. Things that we needed as revenue streams, because this church is for the community. So we had beauty shop. We had everything in here. It all got to go. You can't lease to anybody. The only people that had immunity was, of course, our school.
Sure.
So how are we held to all of this? And these people are going around bona fide organizations, and there's nothing that...
Most of them don't even want to be involved. These people are trying to make it themselves. They're working a full-time job and driving Lyft and Uber at night.
Sure.
Most people honestly don't want to believe something's happening that bad right in front of their eyes. Yeah, they're like, that can't happen. And they talk themselves out of it. And they're like, I don't even want to get involved because I'll get killed or I'll get shot. And I just want to go back to my life and stick my head under a
rock.
bushel. Yeah.
Like this never happened.
Yeah.
Wow.
But it happens everywhere. That's why we started GHOST, our human trafficking strike team. And our first operation was not just an enforcement operation, it was actually a rescue. And we identified in 2018 over 70 kids under the age of 17 from all parts of the county, city and out county, over 70 kids under the age of 17 that nobody knew where they were. Nobody. We got them from
I remember seeing that, yeah.
Yes. And all we want to do is identify, to sit down and say, hey, where have you been this last couple months? Are you okay? Do you need help? And you just talking to them. We'd take a picture. We'd find out if somebody was taking care of them. And that first rescue led us to a 15-year-old girl on the south side of the city who was being held captive in a bathroom, sleeping in a tub. And her pimp, who was an older man, would pimp her out at night. And then if she didn't, he would beat her. At one point, she said he threw a microwave at her head. He crushed her with a toaster. And she was just being pimped out. And that's what started our first proactive ghost operation.
15.
And we have since then, the sheriff's office arrested over 80 pedophiles through ghost operations, 90 total who have been also pimping out. And and this is a national stat, each predator you take off the street saves the lives of 25 future victims because they don't stop. It's the only crime in America that once you do your debt to society, you still have to register on a list for 25 to life.
Yeah.
People still need to know what you drive, where you live, what you look.
And that you're here.
That's the only crime that once you do everything that the judge tells you to do, you still have to register. Why is that? Because you can't turn it off. Pedophilia is a psychological disorder that even those on different fields of study agree cannot be fixed. So that's why they become aware. Wow. You can't turn it off.
And Sheriff, this is why, as pastors, we are so adamant.
Protect the flock.
About church.
Yep.
I know sometimes people don't get it and they say, oh, well, I'm going to get to church when I get there. This is why we need to keep our children under prayer. This is why they have to be in church to receive the word of God, or even if you're virtual because you may have apprehension about being in person. That's why you got to get your kids out to bed. And if you're watching the service on YouTube, or you're watching it on your phone or iPad or device, they need to hear the word of God. Our children need to be covered, because what the sheriff is saying is chilling. And you're talking about a county of 400,000 plus residents. Imagine what goes on in major metropolises like Atlanta or Metro Detroit or some of these other places. And what you're saying is, a girl sleeping in a 15 years old, being basically raped even by this guy who's 22 years old, and is all stemming from an app that probably every child has.
That's right.
On their phone. And some apps, parents, you don't even know. I'm going to deputize all of you right now to watch you. Go get your kid's phone and find out what's going on. I tell my kids all the time, I don't want numbers and stuff on these phones, that I can't get into whenever I want to get into it.
That's right.
Because that gives you time to delete and or hide whatever.
And on the flip side, don't have the same thing on your phone. I have no password on my phone.
I don't have it. For what? My wife trusts me. I've never had that type of thing. She
That's
never had it. After 26 years, there's nothing to hide. Sheriff, I want to thank you. You have just, I'm looking at some of these comments from people around the country.
Thank you.
Who are saying this is informative. Thank God for that this went on. I encourage other pastors who are watching, not only in Michigan but around the country, to reach out to your police chiefs and your sheriffs, and let's have this dialogue, because churches will have to reimagine. We will have to reassess how we use our resources and how we use our pulpits and our voices, and what we've got to do outside of the four walls. We've got to partner with social workers and mental health officials and law enforcement and elected officials on how we navigate this new hybrid form of this world, and understand that we're not going back to how we did things in 2019 or even the first part of 2020, that this is a new day, and Satan is working overtime to try to stop the lives of our young people right now and kill them. And so I decree and declare that this church will stand with our sheriff. We've been standing in the community anyway, but we're going to stand with those, our mayor and our sheriff, our county commissioners, our health professionals, and everyone, to do whatever we can to make sure that we get ahead of this. One of the things that I see a lot is children who come to school smelling like marijuana a lot because of the medicinal marijuana and all this stuff, and fighting that battle. And I often say that Flint was in an epidemic before the pandemic, when you're dealing with lead and what it has done to the cognition and the battle that we have even with our children in that area. That's right. So there's a lot of things we need to fight for and battle for. And so remember Grindr, remember OkCupid, remember Snapchat, remember TikTok, Kick, just to name a few of these dangerous apps that could become portals and or gateways to pornography, pedophilia, and human trafficking. And do all you can, parents, to guard your children, whether they're teenagers or whether they're elementary age, but guard your children from these dangerous, divisive apps that are causing real problems in our homes, in our families, in our communities. So before we log off, I want the sheriff just to give us some more closing remarks about what we can do to be safe, how churches can partner, and what parents need to be aware of as we go forward.
Thank you, Pastor. Don't forget the devil prowls around like a roaring lion, seeking who he can devour.
Yeah.
And we cannot feel that we are immune. And when you have freedom fighters like the church out there, that is the line between order and chaos, that's where the success of families start. And to have the church that we have right here in this community with leaders like yourself, we are going to continue to fight. And you can't let up. And so I would encourage parents that this is a healthy fear, and that you need to take the next step, and YouTube, what's out there. And there are many tutorials that are much more in depth than this. We just did that town hall through the Genesee County Sheriff's Office Facebook page that did a full hour on all these apps and went on an expansion. And then the second one was inside the mind of a predator. And we went inside and talked about actual cases. And we had the audio of our predators. We had confessions of the predators. So you can see what the enemy uses to draw your kids in. All those are important, but do not think for a second that he's not in control. Our job down here is to protect those that can't protect themselves and do for the least of these as unto him.
Thank you, Sheriff. Those of you who are watching, I want to thank all of you again for tuning in tonight for this very informative conversation that we've had with Genesee County Sheriff Chris Swanson. I want to encourage you all, if you're a member of a church, please make sure that you support your church with prayer, support your pastor with prayer, and support your church financially. If your church has ways to give online, just like this church has ways to give online, make sure that if you're a part of a church, support that church. We need all of the prayer and resources we can to keep our young people safe and to deploy soldiers on the ground and to be a force in our communities. Again, this is Genesee County Sheriff Chris Swanson. We want to always remember him as he goes forward to lead us in law enforcement. My name is Chris Martin. I'm the pastor, senior pastor here at Cathedral of Faith, Church of God in Christ. We are America's most exciting church experience. We are right here at 6031 DuPont Street, Flint, Michigan, 48505. We invite you to partner with us, to share with us. If you're looking for a church home, look no further. You can always partner right here with us. You can call the office at 810-955-4495 and be a part of a church that does not believe in staying inside the four walls, but we are real people, real ministry for real change. Thank you and have a great night.